Wait for the red light.
Yes. We are going to film this. You won't know, most of you will not appear in it except for a little bit of the back of your head here and there, but we have, people have pretty heads here, so. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Ralph Demetrius. That's Lonnie in the back. Oftentimes when we're speaking, we speak as a team. We tag team speak. But we're used to doing 6-hour workshops with a big lunch in the middle, so with fairly intense material. And this is a relatively tight, compact speech, so I'm doing it myself, and she's going to video it for our TV show Ask Ralph and Lonnie, which airs on the local chapter. So this is the talk, Creating Clarity, about creating a clear path forward. And it's very physical. It's a very physical talk. It's not about just setting an attitude. It's about how you create that attitude. And certain people here are going to get it better than other people. That's just the reality of it. Okay? So the way we're going to tell that is, could all the right-handed men raise your hand? Right-handed men? Okay. Okay, how about the left-handed men? Okay. Wow, we're like equal. That's very interesting. Okay. Okay. How about the right-handed women? Okay. Yeah. And how about the left-handed women? Lonnie's the only one. Oh my gosh. Well, when we come to the questions, make sure you ask her, because the left-handed women get it the best, and I'll tell you why. You right-handed men, okay, first of all, you're used to the world being designed around you. That's just the reality of it. You're used to the world being like designed for right-handed people and for men. Right-handed women, it's the same thing. You're used to the world being designed around you. Maybe the dimensions are off in certain places, although all kitchens are designed for women. That's just a long design principle that's gone on except for commercial kitchens, which are designed for men. Left-handed women, you recognize that the world was not quite designed for you, because you're having to change stuff all the time. And here's the dynamic. Men will not change things. Know why? Because of their mothers. Their mothers told them when they were children, do not move anything. If they were sitting on the couch and they pushed on the table with their foot and it got out of that little groove, they would hear about it. And they got very clear instructions about this. They are not to move anything unless instructed by a woman. As a result, most husbands, when they go shopping, go along with their wives, and their favorite expression is, yes, dear. And they may have an opinion, but they know that their spouses spend a lot more time thinking about this. Now, women are taught that they can move things. In fact, it's their job to arrange things. They're going to create the environment. Left-handed women take this to the whole next level, because like left-handed men, they've had to adjust. They've had to adjust in their life. And left-handed women have had to adjust, and they feel empowered to move things. So they tend to get it easiest. Not that all of you won't get it to a certain extent, but some of us, if a man moves into an apartment, a right-handed man moves into an apartment, and the furniture is a certain way, he won't move it. He might move the one chair a little bit, but he won't move things. The left-handed man will adjust stuff. And I give you an idea of this. Let's say you go into an office, and the person who was at the desk before you had a different dominant hand. I'm righty. If I get there and the person was there was lefty, right? The right-handed man won't move it. He won't change it. He'll use it the way it is. He might drag the mouse. There's 4 things you have to change. You have to change the height of the chair. People would do that. And you have to change the height of the monitor. But the 2 other things is, where's the phone and where is the mouse? And that's hand dominant. A right-handed man will literally take the cord of the mouse and drag it underneath the keyboard rather than go around it and reset it. And they'll literally hold the phone line over the keyboard while they talk. They'll do this for years because they think they're not supposed to move it, right? The left-handed man will change that within the first day or 2 days, right? The right-handed woman will change it within the first week, and the left-handed woman will change it that morning because she knows she has to change it. But we are all programmed to these different things. And it's, that's cultural programming. Now, to get back on track a little bit about why is this part of the Interfaith series? The actual foundation of the work that we do is a synthesis between 2 systems. One is the Hermetic Tradition, which is one of the most ancient philosophical traditions. It goes way back, and actually many of our current religions are based upon are built on foundations of this particular philosophy. And it wasn't so much a religion as much as it was a philosophy. And the thing about the Hermetics was that we think of philosophy today as an intellectual pursuit because we read about it. We read about it in college and high school. But the Hermetics didn't see it as an intellectual pursuit. They saw the world as the living expression of spirit. And they saw whether or not it was in density or it was in spirit, the two players. And they looked for the place in which they came together, and they worked on getting them into harmony. And the direct descendants of the Hermetic tradition, there's two of them. One is astrology, and the other one's called geomancy. And it's very cool that we have the tree here because the idea of the tree of life came from the Hermetic tradition. And they believed that there were 7 sky branches. And those associate to the five major planets and the sun and the moon. And there were 7 major roots. Well, astrology was the study of the heavenly branches, and geomancy was the study of the earthly roots. Now, we all know about astrology because in the late 1800s, they started making astrology very popular through basically publication in newspapers. Because it was a way to fill column inches with people's like sun sign. One person's a Sagittarius and the one's a Leo. Before the 1800s, no one would have thought of it that way. Astrologers didn't speak like that. They talked about, well, they have this person has Mars rising, or this person was born at midday. That's how they would talk about it. But this was a way to categorize people and fill column inches. A very good trick. Geomancy was not passed down that way. The way geomancy was passed down was through buildings. Who's here been to Washington, D.C.? Right. Washington, D.C. was built on geomantic traditions. It actually has more astrological symbolism, more astrological symbols in Washington, D.C. than any other city on the planet. All that white marble, symbols every place. This was part of the plan. It was designed to a particular triangle based upon the triangle that's formed by 3 stars between Regulus, Arcturus, and Spica. It's that particular triangle that it describes what's called the Federal Triangle. If you go back further, you get to the cathedrals. The Gothic cathedrals were based upon geomantic traditions. The way they would do that, for instance, is they would set up the building so that on the day of the particular saint, the sun would rise directly down the length of the building. And that goes back to particular gods or particular degrees. Before that, you go into Stonehenge, you go to the big stone circles, and you go to the pyramids. And what they were they were condensers. You would have places, especially in England, in Northern Europe, where there's a lot of underground energy. There's a lot of times where you'll have 2 or 3 streams or 4 streams, and there's a spring all coming together in the same place. It causes so much electromagnetic stress that people get sick from it. So they would build these circles of very dense stones as a condenser, as an electrical condenser, to get it to wind inward. And of course, they would line it up with the planets, because if you're going to use it for something, you might as well use it for plotting your calendar. But no one's going to live inside this. In fact, in places in Europe where farmers have taken these things down, people start getting sick, and the animals all start getting sick because of all the electromagnetic fields from the earth, the piezoelectric energy that's now disseminating out into the soil that they had purposely condensed. So they actually put the stone circles back again. This is how they made it healthy. And the same thing, the pyramids are actually setting on top of very large energy lines under the planet. And one of the reasons they put it there was to inhibit earthquakes. And where the pyramids are is the one place on the planet that never seems to have earthquakes. So apparently it was good design, right? Definitely worked. So that's really the tradition, the Hermetic tradition. Now, what we do in our work, we call strategic ergonomics. Because ergonomics is actually a tactical system. In other words, before the 1800s and the 1700s, everything was made by hand. You had individual craftsmen. And people don't realize that when this person was learning to be a carpenter, or they were learning to be a gunsmith, or they were learning to be a jeweler, their first job as an apprentice was making their own tools. Can you imagine that? I want to build a house. Okay, start off with building a hammer. Okay, you got to build the saw next. I mean, that was part of the thing, because they knew they were going to use up their tools in the course of their life. As a result, every tool was designed for that person. If one person had big hands and another person had small hands, the handles were different sizes. Everything was geared for them. But with the Industrial Revolution, they started standardizing everything. They started creating machines that were standardized. So instead of people making the machines, one person made the machines and other people worked on it. And they had to start work. That's when ergonomics developed. And ergonomics comes from the term ergo, which means work, nomics, which means the natural laws. It's Greek for the natural laws of work. It's a modern term. And it started out by basically them saying, how can we get people to work more efficiently so we can get more production out of the same people? And so they would do these time studies. In the course of the last 100 years, they've done huge numbers of studies that have shown when you make people work around like pink, what does it do to them? Or red, what does it do to them? It really dramatically changes that. What happens if, if a person's working and you change the height of the table by 3 or 4 inches? What does that do in terms of productivity? But what does that do in terms of days out? I remember we were doing a lot of work with the state of New Jersey, and they were starting to install computers. And when they installed the computers, the way they would do that, the reason the cubicle developed was because of computers, because the screens were so dim and it was very hard to see them. And also the cables were so expensive. The cables for these things were $1 a foot, so they would run cables at the back of the cubicles and tuck them all the way in the corner. So for the first time ever, people sat with their backs to the door, like that, like little rabbits waiting to be pounced upon. It caused so much stress for people that absenteeism went through the roof. Prescriptions went through the roof. It was just crazy. All of a sudden, people were out all the time because they were sick from the stress, because people had always faced other people. And one thing you find, and you see this in Starbucks, people like seeing other people when they work. That's how we have an ethical community. We can see the boss over there. We know the boss is one watching us, but watching out for us. And that was part of the whole tradition, that you were part of a community. When you start putting people in cubicles, you start losing that. And now, of course, the cubicles are all disappearing. So, and people do this kind of stuff all the time, where they have this tactical relationship. Who here ever brings their computer to Starbucks or a coffee shop? Right. When you walk through the door, if you do a lot of work there, and you see some people there all the time, when they get to the door, before they even look at the counter, what do they look at?
Workspace.
Right. Where are they going to sit? Is their favorite seat available? They have a fave. If their favorite isn't available, they look for what? Their second fave. If their second fave and their first fave are both filled, now they have a question. Do they take a third spot and hope that person moves and they can get to where they want to be? Or they go to another coffee shop and try their luck there? That's the whole thing. So they have to see, is the person just reading a newspaper or are they hunkered down? I don't know. And that's something you could do automatically. People don't realize they do this. And if you ask them, why do you like that seat? If you give them time, they'll tell you why, but they won't know entirely. They say, oh, well, I like being able to see the door, or, it's not too much traffic by me. But usually, many times it's their compass direction. People have favorite compass directions that they like to face, and they are more productive when they face a particular compass direction. For instance, people who are in sales like to face east. People who are in negotiations, they like to face west. People who like pushing against pressure face north. And it's funny, you have certain people, they want to struggle, and so they'll face north. Where we know from kinesiology, from muscle testing, that everyone is stronger when they face south. Southeast, southwest, they're just physically stronger than if they face north. But some people, maybe they had a very difficult parent, It's like physicians. Most physicians, I actually wrote notes, I would actually stay on track. Oh my God, I'm staying on track. This is so cool. Most physicians, for instance, if you let them face towards a door, they get nothing done. They get nothing done. You have to have them have their backs to the door. Because being a physician is a lot of work. So there was usually some parent that really, was there for them. And they typically, when the children, had their desks with their back to the door. So their parent could walk by and see if they were studying without them knowing their parent was looking. So they have this sense that someone's watching them. And in order to get their paperwork done, they have to have their back to the door. If you turn them towards the door, they get nothing done. Know why? Because they like people. That's why they got into it. They like people. They want to be around people. They see that, they're completely distracted. The other dynamic of it too is that it's a part of the healer's mentality anyway, is it's very helpful when you're in a field in which you're dealing with people's health to have a sense that someone is watching over me. You know, it's not just the pressure, it's the fact that someone is watching over me. That's why in offices, being able to see the bosses, you know, I always tell people in management, your main job as a boss is actually to make your team feel safe. The rest of it's just details. Your job is to make them feel safe so they feel confident. But the sense of someone's watching over me is very, very important for them because of the type of work they do. But if they become administrators, they turn around and face the door because it's all about people and they're not worried, you know, they're not dealing with life and death situations. So it's a whole other dynamic that goes on. Okay. Oh. The way we're actually keeping this talk down to a relatively narrow parameter is by focusing on just like 2 buttons. In other words, wouldn't it be great, like let's say you felt there wasn't enough love in your life, and you knew you could go into your house and there was a button, just like a nice switch, and like, you know, the ones you push and you turn them, and you could go there and you just turn that thing on and click it up and your whole love energy would come. Would that be great? That'd be like ideal. There you go. Perfect. Yes, I believe that. Well, in truth, in love, it's actually more complicated. There's about 3 or 4 buttons. But when it comes to clarity, there's really only 2. And when I say buttons, they're specific spots that are dynamics about how your body reacts to clarity in the sense of creating clutter and all the different things that go on with that. And people think, oh, it's an attitude. You know, oh, I'm just a cluttered person. My aunt was mean to me when I was 14. I never got over it. No. It's really physiological. And I'm going to tell you the whole key to the whole thing. And at this point, if you want to write it down on your arm and promise that you'll use it, you can leave now. Because after this, I'm just going to explain why it works. And I'm going to explain this several times. The main dynamic to creating clutter is that when you walk through a doorway, any doorway, that you walk through the doorway standing straight with your eyes up and a little to the right, like that. That's the whole dynamic. That your eyes don't go down to the left or go down towards your feet, they go and to the right. That's the whole dynamic. If you can do that every time, clutter will disappear. Now, you can say to yourself, okay, body, I want you to go through the door, and I want you to always keep your eye up and look to the right, and your body's going to, yeah, sure. I'm not going to do that. Know why? Because my body has 600,000 years of programming that has said to me, there might be bears. You know, my conscious mind knows that when I go in my living room, there's no bears. My body doesn't believe it. My limbic system, my reactive system, my fight or flight system knows there used to be bears. And when I go in that door, and this is the place where you are most vulnerable, is when you walk through a doorway. You walk through a doorway, your field gets compressed, and it springs out, and for an instant, your fight or flight reflex is turned on. You don't realize it's happening, but it happens every time. When you watch cop movies, right, or you watch horror movies, what's the point when the music all comes up? When they're standing outside the door, right? And as they pull the gun out and they go in the door into the quiet house, that's when it goes up, because that's when the fight or flight reflex is being turned on. And it happens to you every time you go through a door, even though you don't realize it. It's an automatic response. It's very subtle. And even though you know, like I said, you know there's no mountain lions behind the couch. Your body doesn't believe it until it sees it. Alligators. There must be alligators under the couch. Snakes. There's definitely snakes. That's what the body thinks. And until I get in there and I can smell it and I know it, I'm not going to relax. And that's part of the reaction. You know, when you're at home and you're watching TV and like wacky stuff is on the TV and it doesn't really, like, you know, excitement, and that doesn't really affect you that much. Know why? Because your nose knows where you are. Your nose knows that you're in your house. You know, there's dinosaurs running across my screen. I don't smell dinosaurs. So your body, which, remember, nose goes directly to the limbic system, knows that. And this says you're cool. Don't worry about it. There's no dinosaurs. But when you go to the movies, that's different. Why is it different? Popcorn. Buttered popcorn. There is a component in buttered popcorn, and they use this scent in a lot of different places, that is thoroughly intoxicating. It's used in plastics, it's used in fabrics, it's used all over the place because it's one of these scents that just captures you. And they make a synthetic. And even when you buy popcorn without the butter on it, it still smells like the buttered popcorn. When you're eating buttered popcorn or around buttered popcorn in a movie, what happens is your eyes are watching this, you're eating this, it so obliterates your sense of smell that as the dinosaur goes by, you do this because you can't smell it because you're eating popcorn. You're thinking, next time I go walking in the woods, I'm definitely not going to eat popcorn because dangerous. But that's what happened. That's why movies are so, it's the full screen and obliterating that sense of smell. Remember this, the sense of smell goes directly to the limbic system. All the other senses, all the other major senses go through the prefrontal cortex. It goes in there, it's interpreted. It arrives there and it says, okay, this is what you think you're seeing, but this is what you're really seeing. This is what you think you're hearing, but this is what you're really hearing. It interprets it. Sense of smell, sense of taste doesn't do that. It goes directly to the most ancient parts of the brain where fight or flight live. And there's no filter. Okay, and the thing is, you never forget a scent, you never forget a flavor. This is why when your mom made chicken soup a certain way, and years later, your sibling makes the soup, and they change the recipe, right? And you notice it right away, and you call them on it. And not only do you call them on it, you're annoyed. Because what are you doing changing the recipe? Because you have an emotional reaction to scent. Scent has an emotional connection. So when you're in a certain situation, if you see one thing but the scent doesn't recognize it, the body says it's not true. That's why TV never has that much power. Though people have home theaters, what do? They have popcorn. That's part of the secret of it. One of those things with the spray Febreze, the way Febreze actually works is it actually obliterates your sense of smell. There's actually things in there that numb your nose. It's not that it overwrites it, it just numbs it. So, now, why to the right? And here's why. I need you to all do a little experiment. You remember, as children, adults do. We play our body as drums, yes? I mean, it's fun, okay? Okay, I want you to tap up on your left side and listen to the note, and I want you to tap on the right side. You notice the right side's a little higher? Boom, 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 boom. It's about almost a full note higher. Why? I mean, it's not the same. It doesn't matter whether you're left or right-handed. It's a little higher on the right. If you do it down here, under the rib, you'll hear the same thing. Do it again. Hear the difference in the two? Yes? No? No musicians? Yeah, good, good. Just want to make sure. Why? Because the left side of the body is less dense than the right side of the body. The left side of the body is what's called the sodium side. And the reason that the sodium side is the main mineral that goes with the stomach. The stomach is basically a hollow bowl with acid inside of it. Right next to it is the spleen, one of the most sensitive of the organs. Also one of the most spiritual of the organs. It's right there. They're very vulnerable. But the right side, this whole section here, is the largest internal organ in the body. It's the liver. And anyone who's eaten liver knows it's very dense. It's very tough. It also has huge capacity. It's like a factory that has 85% more capacity than it needs. And you can actually lose 85% of the function of your liver and not even know it. So, if you're going to take damage to your body or make your body vulnerable, what side do you want to have out? Your vulnerable side or your strong side? Your strong side. And as a result of the denser organs and because of the way in which the body is basically, the liver is the organ that shares out nutrients. Well, if it's going to share out nutrients, whose side is it going to share more nutrients with? The right side, that's where it is. The neighbors are all going to get more. So this right side is always more muscular. It's funny, in ancient books, or when they've looked at the bodies of legionnaires, Roman legionnaires, their skeletons were actually thicker on the right side from carrying their swords so much because there were no left-handed men in the Roman army. Everyone was trained to fight with the right hand. It's like Catholic schools. There used to be no right-handed children in Catholic schools. Everyone was taught to write with the right hand because of that standardization. But the reality is we know there's both. But if you're going to, for instance, reach out to the person next to you like you're going to shake hands. You don't have to shake hands, but just reach your hand out. Okay, now hold up which hand you're using. Your right hand. Yeah. We put this hand out because this is our brave hand. Okay, this is our brave hand. And the interesting thing is that in terms of how our body reads things, the spot where you have the greatest amount of strength and leverage, the place where those two dynamics, strength and leverage, cross, where they meet, is right there, right at the upper chest, right there. If you ever watch boxers, I said to Lonnie, well, everyone knows how to box. And he said, no, they don't. Okay. I was the youngest child in a big Italian family. Everyone knew how to box. But when you're boxing, you keep this hand a little closer to you to protect these organs, and this one's used for short jabs. You never let the hand get too far away from the body because its main job is to protect you. And the powerhouse is from this hand, coming right from that spot. So when you walk into a space and your eyes go up and to the right, and if you hold your hand straight out like that and sight over your knuckles, that spot is where you want your eyes to go. Try it out. Stick your hand out as if you're throwing that spot right where over your top of your knuckles. There should be something on the wall or in the room at that point when you walk in. Because when you look that way, you're going to feel optimistic. Why are children so optimistic? They spend their whole life like this. Mom, Dad, buy me something. Love me, feed me. But they spend their whole life like this. When soldiers go into the army, what's the first thing they teach them to do? Stand at attention. Put that chin up. It makes them focus towards the future. And that's the other dynamic, height. The way the body reads things in terms of time is we relate to the upper section of the body as the future. Why? What am I having for lunch? All the senses up here for consumption are up here. Eyes, I see a rabbit running. I smell parsley, all the different things. I hear rustling. This is future in our body. Here is where we consume stuff, right? This is where a process is going on. That's right now. And of course, below, where we leave whatever we had yesterday, is the lower section, so it's the past. So when you walk into a building, literally you read buildings like that. The upper section of the wall to you is the future. The middle section is the present, and the lower section is the past. This is why when you move into a house and you have all your stuff on the floor, you'll notice that you spend an awful lot of time thinking about the past. Right? And people who have classic clutter, like the hoarder clutters, have nothing on the walls. Nothing on the walls. There's nothing to make them look up to the present. And because they're always trapped in the past, they're living in fear, right? They're not living in hope, so they don't want to let go of anything. People who are confident and people who live with hope are happy to get rid of stuff because I'll get new stuff. I don't need that anymore. And to the right is my confidence side. And also remember, it's the reaching out to other people. The way it works is the left side, if you think of it this way, is me. And so, for instance, when you hold a baby, where do you hold the baby's head? Here. So they hear the beating of your heart. That's me. I'll hold the baby, it's okay, But when I meet other people, my right hand goes out, we. So when in the room, the same thing. When you walk into a room, everything that relates to the left side of the room relates to me, and the stuff on the right side of the room relates to we. When people say, I'm having a problem with my relationships, I say, well, what's on the right side of the room? Are there any pairs? Any images of pairs? Or is it all single images? How are you programming yourself? And then you're looking at the height. So when I'm walking in the room, I'm getting my eyes to go to the right. I'm going to my most confident place, right? This is the main button. My most confident place, a little bit in the future, above present, in the future, not all the way up. Though if you really need to be focused, like someone who wants to go, they really are focused on the future, then you put it up higher. People who these people have wonderful retirement plans all worked out. They have stuff in their house all the way to the ceiling line. No cobwebs. But when you go into people's homes when there's a lot of cobwebs up, and you say, well, what's your plan for the future? They have none. They're not focused up into that future area. And this is also in the dynamics when you go into a great cathedral. What do? You walk in and you look up. It just pulls your eyes up. It's focusing you towards the future. That's why I say when you walk in the room, you want your eyes to go up and stay off to the right there. That's the main button. Make sure I stay on track. Okay. Cool. Now, there's another button. And the thing is, I'm telling you about the first one because you need to focus on the positive. When you're dealing with clutter and clarity, don't focus on your failings. Say, oh, I've got all this stuff. I've got all this stuff in the wrong place. Don't worry about it. Know why? Because it's like when you suddenly get a job and you start making a lot more money. It's amazing how many other problems go away, isn't it? It's like all these problems just evaporate. All the stuff where you were trying to fit, no, don't worry about that, we got plenty of money. It's the same thing when you focus on more energy, you bring your energy level up, you're inspiring more confidence in your body. When you inspire more confidence in your body, and your body feels safer, that affects your emotions. You start making more of the right hormones and things like that. And then that affects your mind, because your mind says, well, things must be cool. See, one of the things, and why this is so important in the doorway, and I say, you go through a doorway and there's a trigger, but there's actually something else going on. Remember, your field, your aura, your electromagnetic field goes all the way out here. In fact, it used to be the practitioners would wear big robes and big hats. So when they would go through a door, if their robe snagged on stuff or their hat brushed stuff, they knew it was too small and it needed to be changed. But when you go through, your field brushes that doorway. Additionally, when you go through, your response, you actually emit hormones. And your body reads them. And whoever went through there before, they did the same thing. And on that primal level, you are reading the message of who walked through there before. So if the door is badly designed, the passageway is cluttered or it's cramped, everyone who goes through there leaves behind this message. It's not safe, it's dangerous, it's cluttered, and you walk in feeling the same way, and then you just go right through that room after dropping all the stuff by the door, right? Go through that room to the next one. If it's the same way, you keep going, and finally you end up in bed with the covers over your head because just, no, I just can't stand it. But once you start focusing on the positive, you're bringing your energy up, and what happens is instead, when you walk with stuff in your hands, instead of just dropping it by the door, you start putting it away. You start carrying the things to the proper place. And so this is where the other button is. The other main button is right there. It's down low and it's close. And to describe it this way, let's say you're out walking up in Skyline Park, right? And you look across and there's a mountain lion, maybe about 50, 100 yards away on top of a rock, looking at you. And you're thinking, okay, could be a problem. But then you hear, and you look over and there's a rattlesnake sitting on a rock about 3 feet away, also looking at you. Which one's more dangerous? The snake. One, not only is it closer, but this one is there. You're kind of in your command spot. You could stop and pick up a rock. You have lots of leverage. But what's your best way of avoiding trouble? There's a Chinese expression. I'll give you a hint. The Chinese expression of the 32 ways to deal with trouble, the number one way is to leave, right? Right. Your legs and your feet are your main way of getting out of trouble. When you were a kid and you got into some situation and you got frightened, and next thing you know, you're 200 yards away. Have no idea how you got there, you're 200 yards away. That's that instinctive reaction. That which threatens your legs is your biggest danger because it's taking away your ability to protect yourself. Okay? So that snake right there. Well, this is also right here in the lower part of the torso where the torso flexes is the point where you have the least amount of leverage. It's in the area closest to the vulnerable organs, underneath the spleen, underneath the stomach. Remember, if you take damage to your liver, you're okay. If you take damage to the stomach with the acid, the warranty's up. You're done because the acid is so dangerous. So that's why the body works to protect us. So this is the area where you feel most vulnerable. So if you walk into a room and there's a lineup of like recycling bins out there on the left-hand side, your body's going to look at it. And I want you to just try this. It's easier when you're standing up, but you can do it sitting down. Imagine you can close your eyes and look up to the right and imagine something over there and see how your body feels, okay? And feel that sense of strength. Tilt your head a little to the right. You're up, you're looking towards the future, okay? Now, bend down and look to the left, towards your left hip. And see how your body feels? It's really a feeling of weakness. It really suppresses your energy. So when you walk into space and your body's imagining snakes, your body's imagining there's something dark there and it's gonna get me. And as a result, when you walk in, your body's always designed that when you're walking, you can see the tip of your toes. As you're walking, you can always see the tip of your toes, okay? Just in the slight for a moment. It doesn't need a lot of indication. As a result, when you walk in, if there's something down there, you will look down. And you have just damped down your energy just at the point where you feel most vulnerable. And you've just painted this entranceway with, I'm afraid. That's not the message you want to have when you walk into space. You want to have the feeling that I'm brave. So the first thing you do is those things go. But